Okay, so wow, really compelling testimony this afternoon from these two teachers. That first teacher who was describing having protected these kids and kept saying that she told them she loved them because that might be the last thing they would hear, and she was talking about how she was feeling guilty because she felt like maybe she had put them in the wrong spot in the classroom, and that she had gotten hit by sounded like shrapnel, and just gut-wrenching. And then of course this last teacher describing making the 911 call. She's a special ed teacher, and the 911 operator tells her to stay on the line, and she says, I didn't stay on the line with him because he could be right outside, and I didn't want him to know we were in this classroom. And then talking about, stuff is falling on her, she's crawling on her belly. It's just, and then you also kind of learn that apparently it was common for there to be bailouts near this school. Because it sounds like there was.
Yeah, that's not the first time that a witness has mentioned that in their testimony, and specifically that the children make reference to that. So apparently it happened so frequently that it was kind of it wasn't uncommon there. And
a little bit of desensitization.
Right. Even the children were like, that's probably what it is.
Yeah, I like I said, that first teacher just, talking about that the kids were just so brave and they did everything perfect. And she says, I took some notes because I just thought it was so compelling. I wanted to tell them that it would be okay, but I wasn't sure. I just wanted to be the last thing they heard was, I love you. I thought, wow. And I keep thinking, what's the purpose of all this testimony beyond the emotionalism? Because it is extremely emotional and gut-wrenching. It seems like, is it potentially to compare and contrast between the bravery of these teachers who are unarmed and the law enforcement that waited 77 minutes?
I think that's a very plausible theory. I really do. And I think for the state to illustrate, look, even these teachers who don't have near as much training as law enforcement officials, and who the training that they do have basically consists of 3 steps. I mean, it's three things they're told to do, and that's it. Like, okay, here's these 3 things, go forth, good luck. They even these individuals who are closest to the danger, still in that moment of heightened uncertainty and unknowing threat to them, they're thinking of the children first.
I know, it's listening to these teachers, and the one teacher who described, gotta check my notes here to make sure I've got this straight. The one who testified about telling the kids she loved them, if I understood him correctly, she said that she had kind of like tried to stay with some of these kids as they went through the different grades.
I caught on that too when they were asking her about where she went after she was done with her stint at Robb. In fact, it sounded like she was telling them she purposely was wanting to progress up each level because she was so bonded to these children that she went through this traumatic event with, that she wanted to stay with them. In fact, I think she said she tried to stay with them to 5th grade, but there wasn't a position available. But when 6th grade became available, she immediately transferred to the 6th grade.
It was interesting that she would talk about that, and this is certainly not on the level of this, right? But when COVID hit, my kid was in 2nd grade. No, let me think. Yeah, he was 2nd grade. And it just so happened that the teacher that he'd had for 1st grade, was the same teacher for 2nd grade, because they had done this like swap thing, and it really helped him that that he'd had that consistency, and so I could see where in a traumatic situation, again, what happened in COVID is not on the level of this, wanting to provide some continuity to these kids, because the level of trauma that these kids and these teachers went through, I can't even begin to imagine. but you know, she talks about, and her last name was Deming. She talked about how you're right, how they were told to hide and get quiet, and that she hears the coach yelling and telling the kids go back inside, and you know, she tells the kids to get back in the classroom. She closes the doors and closes the blinds, and then there's a shot that comes through the window, and she's hit by a piece of shrapnel, and she falls and she loses her eyeglasses. I mean, you're just going, I don't know. It's hard stuff.
Right, and even what was very striking too is she said even one of the children told her that you've been shot, because they see the hole in her shirt. They see the bullet hole in her shirt, and she still is like reassuring, like, no, I'm fine. I haven't been shot. You're like, even then, even in the height of all of this excitement and as the events are unfolding, she's still like thinking about the children. And I know there are people, and I saw this online in the chat, some people were saying, you know, why are we talking so much about the emotional and all that? I mean, you know, ladies and gentlemen, don't kid yourself. These trials, yes, the law is at stake. I mean, it's at issue. The law is at issue, but don't kid yourself. The emotion when lawyers, both prosecutors and defense attorneys, when we evaluate cases and we look at witnesses and we prepare witnesses, we're looking at all kinds of things. Yes, we have to know the law and we have to be versed in the law, but we have to be able to know how to effectively present the story, the events to a jury, so that they will listen and so that they understand, you know, this, at the heart of all this, these are human beings, and they're in here in this courtroom, they're relying on us to help them get justice and to be treated fairly. So, I mean, you can't, yes, it should be kept sterile, and, you know, on paper it looks that way. But once things get going and, you know, people are in there telling their story, especially this case, reliving all of this trauma, you have to be sensitive to the fact, like, okay, yes, I have to tell this, to get the facts out in front of you, ladies and gentlemen, jury, but I've also got to remember these are people whose lives were affected and forever changed by these events. Forever. They'll never be the same.
No, and in fact, one of the things that I think it was Nico LaHood said in his opening statement was that the jurors will be forever changed by this, because we're not even halfway through this thing. You know, we have not. There will be, as we progress through this trial, things that the jurors will see that you can never unsee. Right,
and absolutely. I mean, you are entitled to a jury of your peers in this country for a reason. We have trials in the communities where things happen for a reason, because those are the people that are going to, you're still going to see those people at church. You know, these people that make these decisions, those are your community standards. So, yes, you know, technically it should just be about, you know, X plus Y equals, you know, X and Y equals Z, but that's not how it works. I mean, once these decisions are rendered, once these verdicts are rendered, whichever way they go, I mean, there are people that are going to have to live with that.
Right.
Absolutely. And it sets a standard in the community as well. It tells your elected district attorney, these are the things that we will or will not tolerate in this community. And it tells us as defense attorneys, hey, when clients come in my office and they tell me they've gotten a particular type of case in a particular community, I'm able to tell them, look, I try cases here. I know how jurors in Dallas County or whatever county feel about this type of case, because I've tried them and I've spoken to them after these verdicts have been rendered, and they have told me, you know, they have told the prosecutor, this is how we feel about it, and we wished we had been presented with this or not presented with this.
Right. It was interesting that on cross-examination of Deming, the teacher, basically they asked her, did you know that one of the officers helped pulling, you know, kids out the window was Adrian Gonzales? It seemed like a nice way to get that in front of the jury.
I mean,
I don't know if nice is the right word, but it was kind of a backhanded way of doing it.
Yeah, it was. Absolutely, you would want them to know that. Yes, he may have not whatever the allegation may come down to that he didn't respond at the right time in the right way, he still participated in helping these children, these particular children that, you know, teacher X, you were involved with. He was there and he helped to get these kids out of this situation, along with the other law enforcement officers who were there.
Well, and eventually they're going to see it, they'll see that, because that is on body cam, and they'll also see the body cam of, I assume they'll see it, there's body cam of, so Adrian Gonzales is the first officer on the scene. He's assigned to the high school. He responds to Robb Elementary because he's heard radio traffic, gets over there. And again, I think the question is, what did he know and when did he know it? That's going to be key here. You know, the defense is saying he didn't have line of sight, but he waits for Chief Arredondo and Sergeant Coronado to get there, and I think one other officer, and then they make entry, and I think it was the west side, and you see him in that hallway, and it's when he's in that hallway as, you know, shots are being. Okay, now we got the judge back on the stand.
And the witness, it looks like.